my name is David and welcome to CTV News. Today we will be hearing from Canadian expert on business in France, Jess Pearson, regarding an updated trade manual of France. Today she will be discussing business protocols, customs and culture, competitive advantages, and marketing. We are now receiving a call from Jess. Well, hello there, Jess. It's a pleasure to have you on our show today.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be on your show today, and a big hello to all the viewers out there. As David previously mentioned, I'm going to be discussing an updated trade manual on France and give you all the must-knows. Let's begin by discussing negotiation styles. Canadians and the French have similar negotiation styles, but of course there are some differences. Both countries' negotiation styles are cooperative, and people are often open to compromising if viewed helpful in order to move forward. As well, in both countries, you should express your opinion straightforwardly, but for different reasons. The French need a confrontational approach in the discussion, or else they will not hear you. On the other hand, Canadians prefer when business is quick and cuts to the chase. Some other tips for negotiating with the French are to be patient and a good listener because they're extremely talkative, give direct feedback, so no sandwich method, and use flattery tactical play. They will be grateful if you compliment anything about their history or culture. Language. In France, it is highly recommended that you learn some basic French phrases, as your efforts will be praised and they will go back to English if they realize that you are struggling. Similarly, in Canada, your efforts will be praised if you're using the correct language for that region. Since Canada is a bilingual country, you technically can't go wrong with either, but for example, English is preferred in Toronto, but French is preferred in Montreal. Some other tips regarding language in France are to use welcome topics, praising French cuisine, music, philosophy, and history, to not criticize Napoleon, and do not discuss personal matters during business negotiations. Language can have a huge effect on business dealings since there are many ways you could possibly offend your colleagues. Since the French are very proud people of their culture and history, saying the wrong thing could quickly destroy your relationship and deal. Silent language. For the most part, things are the same in both countries. Good posture is essential in both business etiquettes, as well as eye contact, so long as it is not obtrusive. The main difference lies in the distance between people. In France, the distance between people is rather close, whereas in Canada, individuals prefer their space. In France, it is important to make sure that you have your hands out of your pockets at all times because although it may be common in Canada, it is considered to be extremely rude. This protocol would likely not have an essential make or break effect on the meeting since both countries share many similarities, but it is important to be considered since it shows your efforts and may distinguish you from the rest. Style of dress. Just like silent language, the way of France is pretty much the same as the way in Canada. First impressions in France are heavily dependent on appearance, so quality business attire with some jewelry and accessories are welcome. However, if you come across as dressed too fancy or uncommonly, the reactions will not be positive. Although this may not have as significant of a role on first impressions in Canada, it is still extremely important. In both countries, you should only wear conservative clothing, and an invitation stating informal dress does not imply a t-shirt and shorts. When doing business in France, I cannot express enough the importance of this. The way you look and dress is enough alone for them to like or dislike you. Forms of greetings. In both Canada and France, the handshake is a common form of greeting. French-style handshakes are slightly different than those in Canada. They are known to be brisk and light, and you should expect a loose grip with only one or two up and down movements. If you're not familiar with this light style of handshake, you could easily walk away with the costly wrong impression that the other person is in a hurry to get away from you. Unlike in Canada, in France, kissing across genders is a common greeting among colleagues at work, but do not attempt to do it until your female counterpart makes the initial move. It's important to know this when conducting business in France because it would come off very rude and impolite if you were to accidentally reject the greeting from a partner or client. Gift giving. In both countries, presents should be treated with discretion. Small gifts may be exchanged, but in France, not at the first meeting and definitely not with your business card. In Canada, the gift can be exchanged at the first meeting, but you shouldn't put your business card in. Rather, have a card with your company logo on it. These differences are important to take into consideration because if the gift is not given the proper way, rather than having an added positive effect, it will give the clients a negative perspective on your company. Punctuality. I would say the biggest difference in business between Canada and France is this. In Canada, it is extremely important to be on time, and when attending a meeting, you should arrive 5 to 10 minutes early. It's important to stick in the time frame that you've previously discussed. On the other hand, in France, they are often late and do not apologize. Going into this, you should book more time in your agenda to adapt to their delayed starting time and extended sessions, but do not tell them this in advance. These differences are important to consider when doing business because you want to be able to give the time to your clients and not have to end the meeting prematurely. Business entertaining. In Canada, business entertaining is more common than in France. People will often take their clients out to lunch, dinner, or even events as a sign of good relation. However, in France, they have a strong sense of privacy exhibited in their definite distinction between business and personal life. Do not expect to be invited out in the evenings after work, as most will go home to their families. Lunch is one of the best places to forge business relationships in France, but business lunches are not as common as they used to be. If invited to one, it is always polite to accept. This is important to note because as a Canadian, you do not want to overstep boundaries by inviting your French client out. Scheduling of meetings. In both Canada and France, appointments may be made in writing or by telephone, and depending upon the position of the person you are meeting, are often handled by a secretary. Unlike in Canada, French workers are entitled to 5 weeks of vacation, so it is important to remember that many French employees take several weeks off in the summer. Some companies even close operations for the entire month of August. The best time to schedule meetings is considered to be in the late morning or mid-afternoon, usually 11 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Ensure that you make appointments for both business and social occasions with at least 2 weeks' notice. This is all very important to note because you want to be prepared and organized for your meetings as well as come across that way to your clients. Now, let's talk about France's competitive advantages. In terms of unique resources, France holds a significant place among the European countries and is rich in natural resources, including uranium, coal, iron ore, bauxite, zinc, antimony, arsenic, potash, feldspar, gypsum, and fluorspar. Although diverse, the natural resources of France are relatively limited in quantity. France has some coal, iron ores, bauxite, and uranium, but the coal veins are deep and difficult to work and are unsuitable for use in the manufacture of steel. Iron ores are of low grade, and the uranium ore is found only in small quantities. France is well known for numerous products and services. Here are just a few. Firstly, fine wines. It is home to some of the most expensive vintage wines in the world, including the finest Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Tempranillo, and Chardonnay. France has some 8,640 square kilometers of vineyards dedicated to wine growing, which make it the second biggest producer in the world. Secondly, cheese. France is home to around 400 different types of cheeses, from the oldest known French cheese, Roquefort, to the mild Cabernet, to Brie de Meaux. Only cheeses from these regions are allowed to bear these names. And thirdly, trains. French trains are faster than planes. If you want to go from Paris to the Mediterranean coast to lunch, hop on a TGV, train à grande vitesse, or very fast train. 3 hours later, you'll be sipping rosé and gazing at billionaires' yachts while the flyers are still putting in a claim for their lost luggage. In terms of infrastructure, France enjoys one of the most sophisticated infrastructures in the world, developed through the government's heavy investment in the field made possible by advanced technology. A network of various modes of transportation blankets the whole country, including air, land, and rail transportation. In terms of demographics, France is also extremely developed. They have a highly productive and skilled workforce. French people's thirst for knowledge manifests itself in a high degree of qualification and good productivity. In 2009, France had the highest rate in the European Union of 20 to 29-year-olds completing tertiary qualifications in science and technology. Regarding its labor market, France has one of the highest levels of graduates and the highest number of science graduates per 1,000 workers of any European country. And lastly, in terms of economic environment, in many sectors, their economy is among the strongest in the world. It is among the leading industrial economies in the automotive, aerospace, and railway sectors, as well as in cosmetics, luxury goods, insurance, pharmaceuticals, telecoms, power generation, defense, agriculture, and hospitality. France is also the world's leading tourist destination, at least in terms of numbers, though not in terms of tourist spending. French companies operate worldwide. France is responsible for many major innovations. Some of these innovations include the modern parachute in the 18th century by Louis-Sébastien Leormand, the stethoscope in 1816 by physician René Thomson Hyachin-Linac, the photograph in 1822 by inventor Nicrophone Niepce, aspirin in 1853 by chemist Charles Frederick Garhut, and the cinema in 1888 by Louis Lepresse. A Canadian business can use these competitive advantages to become more competitive in many ways. For example, the company could use France's natural resources to produce their product rather than import them from Canada. As well, knowing that France has such great infrastructure gives plenty of opportunity to use it. For example, their high-speed train system allows for fast transportation across not only the country, but also the continent. Another thing that they can use to their advantage is the skilled workforce. The company can hire innovative and intelligent employees to help them adapt their product to the French market. Effective marketing often constitutes the difference between success and failure when entering a new market. I have chosen Molson Canadian to prepare a marketing mix for. Molson Brewing is the Canadian division of Molson Coors Brewing Company. Molson has many brands including Carling Black Label and Molson Canadian. Their slogan was, "I am Canadian," until their merger in 2005. Starting with crystal clear water, malted barley, and the finest hops, Molson Canadian is slowly fermented to produce a smooth, refreshing beer with a genuine taste. Clean and clear, crisp and cold, Molson Canadian is a classic lager. The benefit of Molson beer is that it is one of the nicer cheap beers and it is good to buy in bulk. The packaging can vary slightly depending on the type of beer it is, but the classic look is like this. The French population is aging. Half of the population is aged between 20 and 59 years old, while 24.1% is under the age of 20 and 25.9% is over the age of 60. France's population has a high and diversified level of mass consumption, which is defined as the very high average level of consumption, whereby most of the people consume a large amount of goods and services other than satisfaction of basic needs. Most French believe that consumption is synonymous with pleasure, therefore travel, restaurants, sports, culture, and entertainment products and services are quite important to most French consumers. They also have a younger drinking age than most of Canada, with the legal drinking age being 18, and drinking alcohol is also considered to be part of their culture. In terms of the distribution channel, they would use the level 2 channel, which is composed of going from the producer to the wholesaler to the retailer and then finally to the consumer. I would recommend that the company set up a brewery somewhere in the middle of France, for example in Lyon. That way it would have easy access to all the major cities that are spread out throughout the country. In France, Molson would not have franchises since it would just be sold to the grocery stores and restaurants like most alcohol in the country. In order to sell or produce wine or beer in France, you must obtain a license 3, which is free as long as a certain quota of licenses in your area have not been reached. Molson beer will be easy to find and available for customers at their local grocery store. Unlike Ontario, alcohol is sold in grocery stores in France. This will mean that the beer is never far away from consumers and can be purchased in one stop while purchasing groceries, something which everyone needs. The only cost that a consumer will incur when purchasing Molson beer in France are the cost of the product and the government tax associated with it. The total cost will be approximately €6 per pint of beer, that is with the 20% tax that the government charges for wine and beer included. The customer will get lots of value from purchasing this beer because it will be a good balance between good beer for a reasonable price, since this is the type of beer you buy in large quantity. First impressions are very important to the French and may have a strong impact on the outcome of your business. This being said, it will be important to make a lasting good impression on consumers when beginning to sell. The most important thing is that everything will have to be in French. Although most understand English, they will find it extremely offensive if you use it. As well, Molson should find a way to make their product stand out on a shelf, since it will be among many other alcoholic beverages. The best way to build a good relationship with consumers will be to advertise at either football, aka American soccer games, or rugby games, since the French take pride in these sports. In terms of price, there are quite a few things to take into consideration. Firstly, the local cost of labor. In France, the minimum wage is €10.03 per hour, and the maximum number of hours one can work is 35. Secondly, natural resources. Hops can cost anywhere from 10 to 25 euros per kilogram, and wheat costs about 175 euros per ton. Thirdly, capital. This can easily be €1 million based on the cost of equipment, building, and the labor for it, permits, delivery trucks, and so on. Fourthly, overhead. This would be approximately 50,000 euros per month, since you must take into account electricity, water, ingredients, shipping, labor, and more. Fifthly, packaging. This would cost around 0.35 euros per bottle. And lastly, inspections. These would include health and safety inspections and regulated tax. Regarding promotion considerations, there are a few tactics that they should use. For advertising campaigns, you should start by advertising through sports sponsors, targeted social media, and TV during popular events. In terms of free publicity, they should include free gifts inside of specially marked packages. This will both increase sales and can promote the brand to even more through usage. For public relation campaigns, they should participate in beer or brewing festivals. In terms of direct marketing, they should focus on appealing to the more masculine aspects of advertising, appealing to the average sports jockey or other beer drinkers. Lastly, for strategic sales promotions, know the company's values and promote around them. For example, having a good time with friends, which is a common theme for Molson Beer. To conclude my segment, I want to express what it truly takes for Canadian business to be successful in France. The two countries are similar enough that by only adjusting a few things to the brand, the company would survive in France. But in order to truly flourish in this new environment, it needs to take their cultural priorities into consideration. The French are very proud of their culture, so Molson would need to adapt to make their product appear to be French. They could do so by making everything in French, appealing to consumers through loved sporting events, and use French ingredients so that at least part of their beer is truly French. If Molson Coors were to follow my instructions, they would excel in the French market just as they do in the Canadian. Thanks for tuning in. That's all for tonight. Back to you, David.